everyone, welcome back to JP's Budget Collecting. In our weekly look back at the hot comics from 6 months ago, this week we're looking back at the hot comics from January 21st, 2022, and I'm recording this on July 20th, 2022, so I'm recording this a few days earlier than normal. Just my schedule, it just worked out better to do this a little bit early, so things might change a little bit in the last couple days, but these dates are just given so you know when this information was actually the most relevant. As always, we're looking back at the CBSI Hot Top 10 and the Comic Tom Key Collector Hottest Trending Comics of the Week. This week we got 17 books to talk about between the two lists. A bunch of covers, bunch of MCU spec, actually a little bit of DC stuff for once. So let's dig into this list, see what factors made these books hot, what's happened to them since. I can tell you it's pretty much with the trend we've been seeing every week lately, but let's see about these individual books. First up, we have Venom number 4, the David Yarden ASM 300 homage. There's a billion of these. This one was off to $10 to $15 out the gate, so this one's super hot, but it was enough that they put it on the list. Now it's a $4 to $10, so a cover to $10 book. 9.8 would only cost you $45 to $90, and most of the sales are more $45 to $60, but there were a couple up toward $90. So definitely a down and an I'll be back. There's a lot of homages to this cover, and this one was, I mean, it's a good one, but I don't know that there's anything that makes it stand out particularly, and you can see that with the prices now. Next, we have Hulk number 3, the Tradmore 1 in 25. Back then, this was a $50 to $60 book out of the gate. What do I say? The rules say if it doesn't get to triple, it's probably going to settle between ratio and double. That's basically what this one has. It's a $20 to $40 book now. 9.8 will only cost you $70 to $150. Pretty wide range on those 9.8s, but that's what we're looking at. So this one actually kind of into a little bit of a trap. It's mostly in the $25-ish, $30 range, so about half what it was back then. So definitely it's turned into a bit of a trap, which is not unusual for 1 in 25. It doesn't make at least triple out the gate. Next, we have Catwoman number 39, the first of the Sozumaki covers. This 1 in 25 was all the way up to $140 out the gate. That usually ends up being worth it. This one didn't quite hold that. It's now $100 to $130 for raw copy. 9.8 will cost you $2 to $225. So it ended up being a little bit of an I'll be back, but still huge value for a 1 in 25 that just came out. Her covers have been super popular on Catwoman. This was the first one. There's a second print. There's been a couple other versions of this exact cover that have come out, but this first one is still doing really well at over $100, so for a raw copy. Next, we have a repeat from last week. This is Daredevil, Woman Without Fear, number 1, the Jim Bartell 1 in 50. So last week when we talked about it, it was only sitting around double ratio. I was like, it's probably an I'll be back. Kind of ended up being a little bit of an I'll be back, kind of worth it, kind of range in that $50 to $80 range, which it is now. But by the second week, it had jumped up. It had jumped all the way to $150 to $200. So I changed my prediction thinking, if it went that high in week 2, it was going to be worth it. It was going to kind of stay, kind of like I did with talking about that Catwoman before. This didn't happen. I should have stuck with the first week results on this one because it did not. It turned into a trap from if you bought it that second week. Big time, as it now is, like I said, a $50 to $80 book. 9.8 though will still cost you $300, which is pretty good value there, even if you got it at that higher prices. But yeah, definitely turned into a trap for a raw copy on this one. Next, we have Moon Knight number 1, the John Tyler Christopher negative space variant, limited to 2,500. Raw copies of this were going for $150 back then, which has been pretty typical. These JTC things have jumped up into this kind of range, but I still thought this one was a little high for this one. I called it and I'll be back, and it actually turned into a trap. It's only $40 to $70, which is still, again, for a new book, pretty good value, but not near what it was going for back then. 9.8 now will only cost you $150 to $225. So definitely a bit of a trap on this one. This is one JTC one, at least to this stage, that has not held, that has dropped back into a much more reasonable price range compared to some of the other negative space ones that are out there. Our last cover of the week is Betty Page and the Curse of the Banshee. Number one, this is Milo Manera variant, was limited to 500. Back then, it was raw copies were going for about $100. It had been going about 70. Somebody mentioned it on YouTube, but it jumped up to 100. Now it's a $40 to $70 book. So back down before it got mentioned range, and even a little bit lower than that. I said I'll be back then, turned into another trap, another book that is well down from that peak. If you notice, we are definitely on a downward trend through all of those covers, and that's going to continue through most of this list. Our first of our Comic Buzz books this week, though, is Strange Academy number 15. First cover appearance of Gaslamp. He was the hot villain for this Strange Academy series. It's pretty popular. It's got a lot of buzz with the series, and a lot of people were betting on Gaslamp when he first came out. Raw copies of his first cover appearance were going for $18 to $20, which is a pretty narrow band. It was right at the $20 range. Now it's a $8 to $20 book. Definitely a bit of an I'll be back. You can definitely do better than back then. 9.8 will only cost you, though, $35 to $50, which is super cheap for 9.8 of a book like this. And yeah, but this one's been down. I don't know if they've done anything really with Gaslamp yet, or if we're kind of still waiting on that. I've not been reading Strange Academy. It is on my list to try to get to, just haven't gotten there yet. So looking forward to reading that at some point. Next, we have Sandman number 10, the first appearance of the Corinthian. You could chalk this up a little bit to the show that's coming, but this was actually because the announcement that James Tynion was writing Nightmare Country that was going to be focused on the Corinthian. So that series has started and has been out for a little while. I don't know how good that one is. I'm just not reading the original Sandman, so I have not been reading any of the newer stuff. But yeah, back then this book was going for $60. 9.6 hit 600. Now it's a $15 to $50 book. 9.6 going for $400 to $500. You could argue, because most of the sales are on the lower end of that $15 to $50 range, like $15 to $30, that this is a trap, but I call it an I'll be back because there still are some sales pushing $50. So that's kind of where this one fell in. But definitely another book that is backed up, despite the fact that the show is coming, but I don't know if we're getting the Corinthian in season 1. I don't know if we have casting for that or not. I haven't heard. Or if I've heard, I've forgotten. Next, we have, we're going to move into our DC TV stuff. And first up, we have Superman Man of Steel number 18, the first full appearance of Doomsday. And we got a reveal of Doomsday on the Superman and Lois show on the WB. So that's what caused this book to jump a little bit. Raw copies were averaging $25 back then. 9.8 jumped all the way up to $150 for this highly printed book, but there's a lot of them out there. Now it's a $5 to $25 book. The really nice copies are still going $20, $25. 9.8's going $1 to $150. So it wasn't a huge jump back then. And it's just kind of settled back a little bit down, a little bit of an I'll be back, which is basically where this book has been long-term for the most part anyway. Next, we have Teen Titans Annual number 2. This had everything to do with the Peacemaker show and Vigilante appearing. This is the first appearance of Adrian Chase as Vigilante. He appeared, I forget now which book it is, but he appeared previously, but this is the first time he was shown as Vigilante. Raw copies were going for $30 back then, 9.8, $275 in the heat of the Peacemaker show. Now, raw copies are cost you $7 to $25. 9.8 is going to cost you $250 to $275. So another I'll be back, just down a little bit on both fronts. And yeah, so I talked about it then. Would Vigilante ever be hotter than he was during that show? Probably not. I mean, he might jump back up here if we get more of him in Peacemaker going forward. So we'll see. Next, we have Suicide Squad number 4, the first appearance of William Hell, who later becomes the White Dragon, which was sort of basically Peacemaker's dad. That show was a combination of a couple characters. This is one of them. Back then, raw copies were going for 10, 9.6 at 50, which wasn't super hot. I call that a trap because I just didn't think it was going to last. It hasn't. It's basically a $1 book now, although there are a few sales up around $5, $6, $7. But overall, it's just kind of an I'll be back because it wasn't that high to begin with. But yeah, there was just not any kind of sustained interest in this particular character because it's not really the same version we got in the show. Our last DC TV movie book is Batgirl number 35. This is the first appearance of the uh, Batgirl of Burnside costume, and basically which is very much clearly the inspiration of the costume in the movie or TV show. I'm not sure we know for sure at this point if it's going to be a movie or a TV show that we're getting from WB, but yeah, we got images and it's clearly based on that costume, her costume in the show or movie. Back then caused this book to only jump up to $5 to $10. I kind of called this one worth it. And it's basically been pretty much worth it. I call this Steady, our first non-down book of the week. This one is Steady because it's now a $5 to $15 book. I do like this costume, and looking forward to seeing what they bring with Batgirl. I'm fingers crossed that it's good. You guys know I love that character. So just a few books left, and we're moving into MCU stuff. First up, we have Avengers 232. This is the book where Eros takes the name Star Fox. And this hit the list again because it hit the list back when the Eternals movie came out. Hit the list again because the Eternals came to Disney Plus, and then we got rumors that maybe Star Fox is going to get like a spin-off series on Disney Plus. No confirmation of that, I don't think yet. Back then, it was a $35 book for a raw copy. 9.6 was going for $144. Now it's a $10 to $25 book. 9.6 was cost you $90 to $150. So this one turned into a bit of a trap because most of the sales are on the raw side, and they are more in the $15 range than the $25 range. So there are a few still up there, but yeah, this one definitely turned into a trap. Not a lot of sustained buzz for Star Fox. We'll see if we get some of that again if we do get a show with him. Next, we get Black Bolt number 1. This is Black Bolt solo series. This hit the list because there was rumors that we were going to get Black Bolt going forward in the MCU, despite the failed TV series with the Inhumans. We did sort of get Black Bolt, and we got a version in Multiverse of Madness. But yeah, raw copies back then were going for $15 to $30. Really cool cover, by the way. But now raw copies will cost you $10 to $20. So this one turned into an I'll Be Back. 9.8 only cost you $80 to $85, which is a little surprising with this all black cover. I think those would be pretty hard to get. But another book, this is down. Not a trap, but definitely an I'll Be Back on this one. With that, we have our last 3 books are all related to the Moon Knight show that was just kicking off around this time. Actually, I don't think it kicked off yet. I think this was just based on trailer. And this is Moon Knight number 2 is our first book, first appearance of Arthur Harrow. Yeah, because this was a trailer because people, looking at my notes now, people had read the lips of Ethan Hawke's character that he was introducing himself as Arthur Harrow, or they said his name was or whatever in the trailer. Causing this book to jump to $40 to $80 and 9.6 all the way to $400. Clearly they did use that name, but it was clearly a very different character than this one-off character in the comics named Arthur Harrow. But yeah, this book has crashed hard in the post-Moon Knight world, post-Moon Knight show world. $1 to $25 for a raw copy on this one. 9.6 down from $400 to $60 to $120. Yeah, this has definitely turned into a dumpster fire. Character was really good. The show was a lot uneven. But yeah, Ethan Hawke did a good job and Oscar Isaac did a good job. Just the show overall was a little uneven. And so, yeah, but this book has come crashing down like almost every Marvel show book has once the show has come and gone. Next, we had Moon Knight number 188, first appearance of Sun King Ra, which a lot of people were specking was going to be the Ethan Hawke character in the show. This one was up to 40 to 50 plus for raw copy, 9.8 pushing 500. I only called this one a trap because the raw sides have held up a little better, $10 to $40 on the raw side, and not a dumpster fire, but the 9.8 is clearly a dumpster fire, going for $60 to $120 now for a 9.8 compared to 500. But yeah, this was definitely another trap. This was not the version of the character. This was not the character he was playing, and we did not get a version of this character. So, and then our last book of the week was a little bit interesting, and it was Werewolf by Night number 32. The facsimile edition from 2021. Obviously, the original version of this book, the first appearance of Moon Knight, is way out of the price range for a lot of people. So there was a lot of push for people to get this reprint, this facsimile version. Raw copies were averaging $15, 9.8 were up to 80. And it's kind of still basically in that range. It's 5 to 20 now for a raw copy, but the average is probably sitting around 15. 9.8 is going for 40 to 100. So yeah, this has been pretty steady. A little bit of an I'll be back. You can do a little bit better if you were patient, but sales are still in those same kind of ranges. So that is this week's list. If you've been paying attention, there were no books that went up this week. There were 2 books that were kind of steady, worth it, right in that I'll be back range. And then everything else, the other 15 books on the list, all dropped in value. This has been a very strong pattern in 2022, both with the way that just the market has moved, and then the list is just backed up a lot. It's funny, like, been doing this for almost 4 years. The first couple of years, it was very much 70, 20, 10. 70% of the books would drop, 20% of the books would stay steady, 10% would go up. Last year in 21, when the market was going crazy, it was almost 50-50 between down and steady and up. So steady and up made up 50%, and then down made up 50%. Now it has swung hard. It's probably this year, I haven't done the math, but I'm guessing it's more like 80% down. So maybe close to 90. It's just, probably 80. But definitely, the market is definitely correcting from 21 as well as just down in general. We'll see how long that lasts. But I want to thank you guys for watching, and we'll catch you next time.